Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 22nd day of April 2024. I want to introduce the panelists here in studio. I have Anthony Ogolla, who is the Member of Parliament for Madare constituency. Good morning.
Good morning, son.
Mheshimiwa, where have you been?
I am busy serving my constituents.
Have I seen you this year in studio? No.
No, you haven't.
It's been such a long time.
Yes.
Almost the end of the 4th month. Janet Ouko is an education expert and analyst. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Sam.
At least for you, I've been seeing you. It's good to see all of you here, and I want us to have a conversation. We are still expecting Mheshimiwa John Kerry, the Member of Parliament for Dagoretti South. As soon as he joins us, he'll be in studio. And I want us to begin by reflecting on the life and times of General Francis Ogolla, who was laid to rest yesterday, by having a look at this.
A distinguished 4-star general has fallen in the cause of duty and in the service of country. Our motherland has lost one of her most valiant generals. He was very fair, but very fair.
There was a description of humility, an epitome of humility. Then the general who has fallen is indeed a symbol of humility.
A very tragic occasion to say farewell to one of the most illustrious sons of this country.
Let's honor his memory by upholding the values he held very dear. Loyalty, honor, and service to our country.
General Francis Ogolla, in pictures and voices of the leaders that mourn them. In studio, I have also John Kerry, the Member of Parliament for Dagoretti South. Good morning, Mheshimiwa.
Good morning, Sam, and good morning, our viewers. It's great to be back on this show. It's early in the morning.
Oh, yes, after a very long time.
Yes.
And we'll be talking about that. But let me begin with you, Mheshimiwa Ogolla, your memory of the general and, of course, the events of the past 3 or 4 days since that flight went down on Thursday.
Yeah, first of all, let me take the opportunity to, condole with the family, especially the family of Francis Ogolla, on behalf of myself, the people of Madare. It's a terrible loss. I think one of the most decorated military generals that we've had, and I think the last few days have been very, very traumatic for very many people. I know that it was the general's wish that we have his interment done within 72 hours. From the community where I come from, we take time to adjust, to accept, to mourn, and therefore to move on. So this was a bit very difficult for some of us, but you know what? Wills are wills. People's wills have to be respected. And as we have laid him to rest, and I think we have honored his will, and he has been arrested, I think some of the questions that we must ask and reflect upon are, for example, what are the protocols that surround the movement, the security, people who accompany somebody who is at the level of CDF. And I think it is good that we step a little back and ask ourselves a few questions. I know there are people who have said don't speculate, and we respect that. I know the president himself has said if you were to appoint General Ogolla again, he would, and I believe him. I know he has said that in the hands of General Ogolla, our security was assured. I also know that Duale himself made a statement that seems to absolve him, Atandi and other people, Orengo, that Ogolla was not the kind of person that would be associated with some of the things that were said about him in respect of the Bomas Day. But then again, looking at the historical occurrences of such things, we need to step back and ask ourselves, is our security assured? Is the security of this country in good hands? And I want to begin from what the president said, that in his hands, our security was assured. But how could the security of this country be assured when the CDF himself could go down, whether it is by way of a mechanical breakdown of his aircraft or helicopter, whether it was banditry attack, whether it was foul play and assassination? I think this is a question that needs to be asked. I don't think the president himself has the answers. I don't think the family members have the answers. I don't think anybody has the answers. And I think what lends itself at the moment is to allow a thorough investigation. In circumstances like this, when you have questions lingering, and we must allow Kenyans to speculate. I don't think there is anything wrong with that. When we had 9/11, a lot of protocols surrounding US and the world security in terms of how do we engage, how do we move, how do we allow people into our airports and allow people into our airports and into hotels. These protocols change. When two presidents were assassinated, JF Kennedy, there were lots of protocols that surrounded how the president moves. There are vehicles that you have that move around with the president, the airspace that are guarded. When I looked and checked, I think a few days ago, how the protocols around the president and CDF, when you check it, every time they mention the president or the CDF, they would mention them almost contemporaneously. And that seems to suggest to me that the protocols, the security, and the level of checks around the president are almost similar to those of the CDF. Yeah? And whenever it is they have mentioned security of the president and security of the CDF, they have also mentioned the security of the state. Yeah? So that seems to suggest to you that if a CDF could go in the manner that General Francis Ogolla went, we must worry that the President of the Republic of Kenya is himself in danger. That worries me. I did not myself vote for President William Ruto. That is on record. My president of choice was Raila Amolo Odinga. But make no mistake, if today I had that the president and the current occupant in office, who is William Ruto, were to go down and go down in the manner in which the CDF went, I would be shaken to the core. I think Kenyans would be shaken to the core. So I think this is an opening for us to reflect and see seriously and looking again backward in terms of how many other people have gone like this. And you must compare it with people who went before. Professor George Saitoti, the Minister for Internal Security. Yeah? And then you had General Kaiseri. The parallels or the comparisons with this is that these were civilian people heading our security sector. But this is the CDF. That's as close as you can come to bringing down the president. So whether he went by way of a banditry, which would mean then that we must now stop and say, this must stop, this banditry that has been historical. We have been talking about it in whatever, West Pokot, from as far back as I can remember, or mechanical. Then we must ask ourselves if the chief pilot, the most decorated pilot to fly anywhere in this country, would himself go down in a helicopter crash, whether mechanical or whatever way. It worries us. My last point on this, so I leave my colleagues also to pass their sentiments on this, is that the president has assured that under his watch there will be no extrajudicial killing. And I believe him. We should believe him. There should not be any extrajudicial killing. He said that before, and he said that again. Now, we cannot tell that this general did not go down in a similar manner. Yeah? And it did not help that certain unfortunate statements were made before from His Excellency the President. This contradicts what his defense minister says. His defense minister says, in an attempt to absolve the general from any conspiracy during bombers, that he showed me text message that says, I was sent to bombers and I asked myself, what am I doing here? It may very well be true. He showed a text message again upon there. Now that I'm here, there's going to be a swearing in. What am I still doing here? But then this contradicts what the president said at a public television interview, in which he said, and I quote, I appointed General Francis Ogolla despite him being one of the people at Bomas who were there to take away my win. And I do not wish to impute improper motive. But this is then a call for us that the presidency is such an important office that any pronouncement that we say, including one similar to this, and then General Ogolla or anybody would go in an accident, and he could easily even just collapse. Then people then would start bringing things that probably are neither here nor there. Yeah? You should restrain yourself from making statements which then can be misconstrued at a position when you're totally divorced from statements such that mambo ni matatu. Those things are very unfortunate, and you'll forgive Kenyans then trying to put dots which perhaps are non-existent. And I want to emphasize this. These dots could be absolutely non-existent.
Okay.
But then that means that the president must be very circumspect. And I looked at him struggling to try not to be in a position where people would bring him down below Caesar, because in your position as president, you must be beyond suspicion. And I know he's probably beyond suspicion on this, but then you put yourself in unfortunate situations when you make statements which then people can use against you. Yeah? But I want to believe the president that no stone will be left unturned. And I want to say that on my part, I think as Parliament and Honorable KJ is here, we must go beyond what they might have put in place in terms of an ordinary inquiry. We must bring this to the level of when Robert Ouko was brought down. Parliament must pass a resolution to put a commission of inquiry so that we can put this issue to rest.
Is there a possibility, knowing that this is a military issue?
Well, I don't know that commissions of inquiry are gagged, or that generals, including the president is the commander-in-chief, isn't it? Meaning that he actually wears military regalia at some point. He is a military person. I think he gets military training. Are we suggesting that if the president were to go down, and if CDF went down, trust me, if they were bandits, then they will go to the next target, which is the president. I would be shaken to the core. I don't think our constitution insulates inquiry into the death of a person, including CDF. And if it is, then we must debate that. We must debate that in Parliament and ask ourselves whether that is an impediment that we should remove.
But in practice, how much visibility does Parliament have of the Kenya Defence Forces? I know there's a committee for defence, but how much oversight does it have?
Yes, this oversight is something that, let me begin with budgeting, for example. We try to scrutinize, and there are things that then would be said, these would be blindfolded for security reasons, isn't it? Even if for security reasons, that inquiry should be done and a report handed over to the chief of defense forces, no, that's not the chief of the commander-in-chief, who is the president, who would then decide if there are for security reasons things there that need to be redacted so that only portions of it are made public, even if for the benefit of the president himself. and the president sits in the Security Council. This would inform, in my view, even the Security Council on how they would rejig the security around the commander-in-chief, who is the president, the CDF. So I think that the inquiry should still take place, and howsoever that information is consumed would then be left to the president and the Security Council.
Okay, all right. And Janet, a lot of questions are being asked, including the state of the equipment that our security forces are using. I don't know, is it that point when a country comes to reflect on the entire infrastructure, and even as you reflect on that, what are the possible steps moving forward to ensure that no other person goes down in such a manner, whether they be the CDF or just servicemen?
Thank you, Sam. And I also want to, join the rest of the Kenyans in condoling with the family of the fallen general. Indeed, it has been a sad moment for this country. And I want to begin by associating myself with all the comments that have been made by my friend Wakili, Honorable Luoch, and really look at it from a point of, in addition to everything that he has said, which I don't want to repeat, just take it a notch higher and say, especially for those cross-section of Kenyans who are saying that no, let the family mourn, do not ask so many questions. I want to say that we are not asking questions because this is your kin. We are asking questions because we are Kenyans. This concerns us. This is among the highest cadre of leadership in this country. And if something like that can happen to someone like CDF, then I think Kenyans really are asking a few questions that have to be answered and must be answered. And I also say that Kenyans are not very comfortable with the body language of some very senior government officers. You do not defend an inquiry even before it has begun. You do not go ahead and try and pacify issues. If really everyone is at peace that really it was a natural occurrence, then that will reveal itself through the commission that the inquiry that is being set up, if indeed we believe in the very commission that we want to set up. But having said that, this is not the first time Kenyans are going to be interacting with commissions of inquiry. So Kenyans can almost know what report will be there, because I can almost tell you that it will not come now, it will not come in the next 6 years, it might never come, And so it leaves people in a very awkward situation.
The president said he's committing that it will be made public.
We wish we can trust him, because there are other commitments that he has made in the past that he has not fulfilled, only for him to come again and make brand new comments. So I think we are dealing with someone that probably, and I think Honorable Loch has alluded to that. Is the president talking too fast and too much, because like the contradiction about what General had gone to do at Bomas, and then his very own cabinet secretary contradicting him. I do not know that there is anybody in this country right now that can actually go to sleep saying that the president said this and so it is going to happen. We are in that kind of a situation, and I think it's something that the presidency needs to take very seriously, that he needs to tell us when he's telling us the truth. He needs to tell us when we need to trust him, and he needs to tell us when it is a political moment, that I'm saying this for convenience and I'm saying this to rally people. But I think quite a lot has been said by the people whose responsibility this is, and I think Honorable Loch and Honorable KJ, the onus is on them to really take this one in Parliament and just make sure that a very credible inquiry happens, and a few of the questions, if not all the questions that Kenyans are asking, can be answered. But I want to look at something else that really came out from General's life, and I think he really brought out a different kind of a public servant, something which has been lacking in public service. We have not seen such kind of dedication. And I think the other time that we came close to this was in the life of the late C.S. Magoha. And I'm just wondering that if these narrations of how General lived his life, how he executed his duties, can we say that about the public service that we have at current? A lot of statements were said yesterday to the effect that Ogolla was appointed by the president not because he was Luo, not because he was, but because of his competence. Then again, look at the public service at current. Honestly, we cannot say that that is what is happening. We cannot look at our public service right now. I know one of the other biggest complaints that has been is the tribalization of the public service all over again. And that's why we are saying that we are dealing with the presidencies that we cannot be able to trust. You cannot tell us that it is because of General's credentials, it's because he was the best, and that is what you're practicing in your government. But, sir, when we look at it, and we can be able to tell you with confidence, there are sectors in this country that are dominated by one community, and that is fact. Is that particular village the only one that has competencies to probably perform certain functions? So we're saying we've really gone so down, so low as a country, that we really don't know what to bargain for. We really do not know the asks that we need to ask. We do not know the kinds of engagements that we want to have with the institution of the presidency. But I think when such things happen, it really puts to pride that really they are Kenyans that still believe in servitude. They are Kenyans that really believe in values, like family values. They are Kenyans that really still hold dear values that we are teaching our children. Because remember what we say, that even in education, values are caught and taught. We cannot just entrust teachers with the responsibility of teaching values. But when they come out here in the social media, our leaders and people that we emulate are living different kinds of lives. Values are caught and taught. And I know that in the experiences and the life of this general, we have molded so many youths that really say, yes, family is important. Yes, working hard is important. Listen to the testimony of the girl that was saying that this was my dad who was juggling, commute. He was in a parallel program, was able to get a first class. I really love it that people are saying hard work really can get someone somewhere. At current, people are talking about working smart. It is not bad, but there's still the place of hard work in our society today.
Right, and Honorable KJ, sorry, John Kerry.
Tell me.
The same person. So many questions are being asked, and I'm looking at even since the announcement was made that the general had passed on Thursday evening. Since that time until now, a lot of moving messages from the political class especially, absolving him of any manner of accusations that may have happened before. Yet those unfortunate sentiments are still, they still circulate even to date. And I'm just wondering, the president said that along those lines that he appointed General Ogolla against any advice from anyone. And I find that contradictory, because the statement before the swearing in of the general was that the Defense Council had made a recommendation. So how do we tell what is factual from what he said, what is convenient, and how should Kenya deal with such a situation of the passing of a CDF in such a manner?
Thank you very much, Sam. And such concerns would not necessarily need to be dismissed. But we've also got to have the sensitivities, Sam, that here is a father, a husband, an uncle who has passed on. So even as we have this banter in public, we've also got to start from that level of sensitivities. And it is for that reason, Sam, that I would like to start by, first of all, saying my very heartfelt pole to the wife of General, his two children, his family, the KDF and the country at large, because I had opportunity to meet General Ogolla in person. And what a fine gentleman, and what a loss to the country. I would want to say that we are hearing so much in the public domain, most of which is bordering on speculation. I have had the opportunity to see the chemistry between the head of state and the late general, and observing them at close range, you would get to realize that these are two individuals who have so much respect for each other, who have so much, what would you call it, camaraderie at work. And so for me, I would want to just be left with the memories of the general I knew. And this general that I knew is what we are publicly seeing during this mourning period. The good book tells us that you shall know them by their fruits. And if the fruits of General's personality is the family that he leaves behind, we have had a sneak preview into the kind of family that he has brought up. I would also want to say, something which is also very fascinating. The whole conversation in this country around mourning rights Here is a general who passed on and left a will and said that the remains should be interred within 72 hours of his passing. This is a hard conversation that this country probably needs to have. We've got to ask ourselves, in families, in communities, and in parts of our society, where we find a community spending way much more on their dead than they do on education in a village, that should be a concern for us as a family. And we've also got to disabuse the notion that some of these mourning rites are cultural or are traditional. When you think about it, our mourning rites were very, very different in our pre-colonial times. We cannot own up bad manners and call it our traditions or our culture. I think that there is great leadership in what people like the late General Ogolla have shown this country. People like the late Wangari Maathai. These are thought leaders that challenge us, even in their death, challenge us to even reconsider some of the things that we hold extremely dear. You're working from a newsroom, and you know some protocols around the broadcast of news. In this whole saga around the death of the late general, we also as a community need to revisit our understanding of how we communicate. For example, we had the son of the general mourning at the funeral that he was receiving the news of his father's death through social media, that he had been alerted that something had gone terribly wrong by his mother. And minutes later, he is seeing on social media pictures being broadcast around of a helicopter that has erupted in flames. You remember that traditionally, newsrooms were the gatekeepers. But with the proliferation of media, where every single citizen becomes a journalist, then it behoves each individual to not only be that sensitive, but to also take into consideration how the protocols around communicating tragedy, and especially where death is involved. The final thing I'd like to say, Sam, has to do with the circumstances around the death of General Ogolla. We are told that he was on a mission to the Rift. There cannot be more tragic news that the chief of defense forces, and this is speculation, could have been brought down by a bandit. We ought to now take the issue of banditry in this country a bit more seriously. I know that there is a lot of work that is happening. I know that the Ministry of Interior has put in quite some work into addressing this banditry situation. But the president himself actually did bring together the Office of the Interior and the Kenya Defence Forces in addressing the issue in the banditry-prone situations. And there will be a place for investigation into all this banditry activity if we are going to have an investigation that is going to tell us what exactly happened to the helicopter that came down. What is important?
Honorable Kerry, let me ask you, is it possible that 4 days later there's not even a hint of what happened?
It is possible. Remember again, this is the Chief of Defence Forces, and each and every Kenyan is asking to know what happened, and not only to get news that is speculation, but the actual facts. So I believe that if this investigation, which I believe goes to the military, it is going to be carried out with military precision. And military precision does demand that, for example, that information is only released as and when it is verified. So I would be keen to call upon myself and other Kenyans to also be to be patient with the investigation that is going to happen. It's going to inform a lot going forward. As I said, it's going to inform on issues of how the VIP are handled, how air transport of very important people in government and other high places are ferried. But most importantly also, the situation around the coming down of that helicopter in a banditry-prone area, where I know a lot of work is going into not only disarming the warring parties, but also working on long-term solutions, which include the construction of infrastructure, the construction of schools in these banditry-prone areas, the total disarming of warring communities, the stopping of flow of small arms from through porous borders from our neighbors and so on. So this is going to be an extremely wide investigation that might give very far-reaching recommendations.
I hear you, Honorable KJ. Again, I ask you this. It was on Thursday afternoon. The President put it at 2:20 p.m. Up until now, there are 2 survivors. There were troops on the ground. Nobody has a hint, or it's only that information has to be managed.
Information is being managed, and I believe it will be managed. But we have people, even you yourself have carried as a media house of first-hand accounts. And I would believe that is as much as we have so far, pending official communication that would probably be coming from the right sources. And I believe in due course, we will get to know exactly what happened. What we have right now is just eyewitness accounts of a helicopter that came down with propellers that were not spinning, that eventually burst into flames. That's as much as we know.
Sam, allow me to make just one quick comment as we exit this conversation on the role of the family in circumstances such as this. And I want to agree that it is important that the family plays a fine balance between mourning, wanting to know what exactly happened, which they will want to know, and also dealing with a situation where you don't inflame the public. It's a very fine balance that they have to play. And I want to relate this because as a student leader way back when Robert Ouko died, I remember the country was waiting to burst into flames. There was in the air a complete feeling that this was a government assassination. And I remember as a student leader alongside other student leaders from other universities, I was then in KU before I did law, we went to Koru where the Ouko was going to be buried. And if Christabel Ouko had said what the public had wanted her to say, that my husband was assassinated, and he was assassinated. Let me tell you, and I can speak for myself then as a hot-blooded student leader, we were waiting for that one word from Christabel, and we would all have perished. Let me tell you, we were surrounded like in this room with GSU, Army, everybody, because the then President, Moi, was attending in person. And I had a personal vow, which I know everybody else that was there who were student leaders had, that they would have been ready to die. Can you imagine where the country would have been? I would not even be in this room then, because we would all have been sprayed. Because the military and whoever was surrounding the president then, of course, would not have allowed an attack on the president, because then people were putting it at the doorstep of President Moi. So I want to appreciate that there are people who probably blame the son for, why is he speaking like he wants to pacify the situation. I have been at the scene, a similar scene, when if one reckless statement had been made by Christabel,
it's important, Sam. It's very important what Wakili Oluoch is saying, and again, it gives it gives credence to the statement that in such high-charged political and public situations, management of the flow of information is critical. And we've also got to thank God for such a beautiful family that General Ogolla brought up, an extremely smart daughter, a well brought up and charming young son, who were able to, at times of such pressure, in a time when the family is mourning, to be able to open the door into what kind of a personality General Ogolla was, to a point where in the whole process as we were going through the mourning, the family was telling us this is exactly how General Ogolla would have wanted it to go down, and as such, managing the public emotions. But more importantly, think about what you give the time at around 2:20. We've also got to give credit to our military in terms of their management and management of their protocols in sending home their chief of defense forces. I would imagine the president getting the news at 2:20. He was seated in an auditorium where he was being entertained by the state concert winners of the Kenya Drama and Film Festival. And as he was seated there, finishing up the festival, I would imagine that at DOD, there were people who were burning the midnight oil to ensure that not only do they manage the flow of information, but at the same time, they are managing the events that would follow to ensure that within 72 hours, the remains of the general are interred. So I do see some great synchronicity that comes from experience, but also from information. And for that, we've got to really laud the people who have brought us to where we are. That includes the executive, the KDF, and most importantly, a critical cog, the family. They have really managed this quite well, Sam.
All right, and of course we continue to remember the following: Sergeant Rose Nyawera, Sergeant Cliffon Somondi, Senior Sergeant John Kinyo Muridhi, Captain Hilary Litali, Captain Sora Muhammad, Major George Benson Magondu, Lieutenant Colonel David Sawe, Colonel Duncan Keitani, and Brigadier Swale Saidi. Some of them have been buried, others will be buried starting this week. And of course we'll continue to remember their lives and for what they gave to this country. We're taking a short break. When we come back, we talk about the question of Nairobi, the challenges the city experiences, and their solutions after the break.